There we go. And I remembered this time, so that's a big win for me. You should be seeing not just my video, but my PowerPoint. I've been reassured by several of you that you can see that. So we're gonna get going unless someone has any pressing questions before we get started. Okay, I see a thumbs up. Awesome, thank you. All right, so today what we will be doing is talking about kind of the same things we did last time, but moving on to new grocery store departments. So we're going to talk about how to stretch your dollars. We're going to talk about looking at labels, and we're going to talk about finding healthy choices. So hopefully you'll feel like a more empowered shopper. Those of you who've been to my classes know I don't love food marketers very much. So we'll talk a lot about seeing through some of their ploys and how to read labels and be really savvy shoppers after we're done. But I wanted to start with a little bit of a icebreaker. So I know that the pandemic has changed how we do some of our grocery shopping. And I was wondering if any of you wanted to share whether you've ordered groceries online during the pandemic, especially if you loved it or hated it. Does anyone have any comments? And you can put in the chat or speak up. Don't forget to unmute if you are muted. Okay, Caroline says, I have. Who said, Nicole? Is that you?
Nicole said I did not. I probably should have been smarter, but I didn't.
Okay.
I have not. This is Camellia.
Yeah. I haven't either. That's what I was wondering. So those who have, do you guys like it? It seems like it's like a 50-50 split, actually. What do you guys like about it? Are you going to keep doing it?
My daughter in Arizona has done it, but her reasoning is that she has 3 young kids, so it was easier for her.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it definitely makes it easier, right? You don't have to guide your kids. And we've talked a lot about how to work with kids in the grocery store and how they might ask for stuff. And you have to be really good at saying no. Yeah, it costs more, but it can be convenient. It's easy and a time saver, Irene says. Yeah, those are all really good reasons. And people are going to keep doing it, I think. A milk delivery weekly. Oh, that's awesome. That reminds me of, like, yeah, the milkman back in the day. That's very cool. Yeah, so some good things, right? Convenient, easy, makes yeah, more efficient, right? And sometimes making that it makes those like spontaneous unhealthy choices a little more difficult because we can be really good planners, right? So yeah, I'd be curious to see how the pandemic has changed grocery shopping for the future, and maybe we need like an online grocery shopping tour class next. But I might have to try it first. So thank you everyone for sharing. That's awesome. So we're going to start with dairy today. So for those of you who know, we kind of left off with meat and fats and stuff last time. So we're going to start by actually talking about milk. So sometimes choosing the right milk can be difficult. Does anyone know what the main difference between skim, 2%, 1%, and whole milk is? Don't be shy about speaking out.
A fat content?
Yeah, that's basically it, right? It's the fat content. So some people think that, you know, skim milk is actually diluted with water, which isn't the case. What they do with the milk is actually just, whole milk is actually 3.25% fat, which a lot of people think is actually a lot more, but that's kind of where that's how much milk fat is in there by weight. So with these other types of milk, they've actually removed some of that fat, but nothing is added. And no other nutrients are taken out. So all you're really changing is the fat grams and the calories. So to compare, a glass of whole milk, an 8-ounce glass, has 150 calories and 8 grams of fat. And if you go all the way down to skim, which is fat-free, right, you have 80 calories and no fat. So a big difference in that. People who are working on weight loss or who are worried about their cholesterol levels might want to consider a lower fat milk. That's generally a healthier option. And there is no difference in the nutrient content and there's still a lot of high quality protein in that skim milk, so you're not missing out on that. It's really common, especially for people who are native, to be lactose intolerant. So does anyone have some good options for milk substitutes that they found?
Broccoli and almonds are high in calcium.
Yeah, so you can get a lot of the same nutrients from these other foods. Yeah, that's awesome. Good point. What else? Almond milk, yeah.
I can't remember.
Go ahead.
I can't remember the name, but I know my sister buys some lactose-free milk that they have by the regular milk.
Yeah, so I was going to bring up lactate if no one did. So I'm glad I see a couple people in the chat, and I'm glad you brought it up. So lactate is not really lactose free. What it is it has an enzyme in it that helps you break down the lactose. So lactose is the type of sugar that's naturally found in milk. So milk is a relatively sweet product, right? Next time you taste a glass of milk, think about it. You'll be like, wow, that's really sweet because it has all this natural milk, all this lactose in it. And people who are lactose intolerant, they don't have this enzyme that lets them break down the lactose in the milk. So the lactate has added that enzyme, and you can actually take it as a, as a supplement pill along with it, or you can buy that lactate milk. So lactose, as far as I understand it, Caroline, as an answer to your question, it's not, the lactate isn't necessarily better for people with diabetes because it still has that lactose in there. It just also has that enzyme to help break it down. So if you're looking for a low carb option, if you have diabetes and you're trying to cut down on the sugar intake, something like almond milk might actually be a better choice. Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay, there's so many milk substitutes on the shelf right now. Like if we were in the store, we'd see like the oat milk, the almond milk, the, what else I'm missing? Like I have to like see it in front of me. Soy milk, obviously. Each one of those is going to have kind of a different nutritional breakdown. Yes, Emma says oat milk is good. I like it too. It's really thick a lot of times. So you just want to make sure when you're buying these different types of milk that you are looking at the nutritional labels and seeing what else is added to them, right? So anything like almond milk, oat milk, those things often have added sugar and stuff. So you want to look for that. And they'll also have just naturally different nutritional contents, different amount of carbs and proteins. So definitely take a look at that and make sure. And yes, Dean, lactose is a form of sugar. It's a form of naturally occurring sugar that comes from milk. So we're going to go over this in a little bit in the cereal section, but you'll see that one of the tricks is that anything that ends in ose, like sucrose or fructose, is a sugar. So in a glass of milk, for those of our people here who might have diabetes or might be really into carb counting, there's about 12 grams of carbohydrates in an 8-ounce glass of milk. So it's pretty sweet. So almond milk will have a lot less. I don't know it off the top of my head, but something to keep in mind. And then coconut milk, oat milk, those all have different amounts. So find something you like, find something you enjoy. In terms of regular milk, maybe find the lowest, I would suggest the lowest fat content that you can enjoy, especially if you're trying to control that cholesterol level or lose some weight. All right, any more comments, questions about milk? Cool. So the other part of dairy that people often have questions about is our yogurts. So how do people choose a yogurt? I still feel overwhelmed when I go to the yogurt aisle trying to find a yogurt that I want. Anyone have any tips, tricks, techniques that they use when picking out a yogurt at the store? Go ahead.
I looked at the sugar content, and I was getting non-dairy yogurt. I was trying out some of the almond milk ones, and the sugar content on most of them, except for the unsweetened, was so high. It was unbelievable, more than a bowl of Trix.
Oh no. I'm glad you looked. That's awesome. Great use of food
Wow.
labels. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, so important to turn it around and look, right? And we have people sharing in the chat, they look for light yogurt, which could frankly mean low fat or low sugar. It's hard to tell, or low calorie. Aurelia says sugar content. Linda says low fat or low carb, low fat, low sugar. And just going back real quick, Camelia, I don't think there is a difference in carb content, but I would want to verify that, but I don't think so in the different types of milk, she was wondering. So yeah, you guys have picked up on a lot of it. Yogurt can be super confusing and you really need to look at the labels. And one of the reasons that is because oftentimes, yes, we want to cut down on our total sugar, but we're often more worried, especially if we don't have diabetes and don't have a carb count, we might be more worried about added sugar, which is not as good for us as natural sugars. So, but what we just said was that milk, which yogurt is made from, has all this natural sugar in the form of lactose. Now, once it turns into yogurt, because yogurt is fermented milk, and when things get fermented, right, the bacteria break down some of those sugars, they use it for food. So there's less sugar than in milk, but there are still natural sugars in yogurt. So, and there's also fruit yogurts, right? So they might add fruits, then those add natural sugars. So if we just look at sugar, period, we might be confusing our natural sugars with our added sugars, which might be listed as sucrose or corn syrup or something like that. So looking for low sugar content is a really, really good thing to do. Just remember that even if you get plain non-flavored yogurt, you're still going to get some sugar. And then fat content is also important, like Dean pointed out, and Linda, looking for low fat options can be really good. And then some people have preference over type, whether they get regular or Greek. Does anyone know the difference? I think that 000, I'm going to say it wrong, oikos, or is a Greek one, but anyone know what makes Greek yogurt Greek and what makes regular yogurt regular?
I've heard that Greek yogurt has a higher protein content, but that's all I know.
Yeah, and that is true. So yeah, I'll go over some of the nutritional differences, but yeah, it does have a higher protein. Any other ideas? Yeah, regular yogurt. Caroline's kind of hit the nail on the head kind of indirectly. She says regular yogurt is runny and Greek variety is not runny. And that's because basically Greek yogurt isn't anything special. It is just regular yogurt that is strained. So if you've ever made yogurt at home or seen regular yogurt, there's a lot of extra liquid in it. If you take that in like a cheesecloth and just strain it, you can actually make Greek yogurt. You get a lot less volume, so it's a lot thicker and denser. So you get things like more protein. You also get things like a little more fat if you're not buying the non-fat variety. So you do have to be aware of that. Greek yogurt typically has a little less sodium naturally. And Greek yogurt also has fewer carbohydrates. So that's kind of the difference between regular and Greek. I hear a lot of people say Greek yogurt has this texture that they just can't get over, but it's healthier, so they muscle through it and they eat it. I don't think anyone should do that. I think if you really hate Greek yogurt, don't go overboard with it. Just you know, go for what you like. My suggestion, and this is what I always do because the fruits often mixed with the sugar, you might get sugar substitutes too, right? And some people are comfortable with that and some people aren't. I always buy plain yogurt and then mix in what I want to mix in, whether that's fruit or a little bit of honey or whatever I want to add, because I know how much I want to add to my stuff. So I tend to think that's a little healthier in terms of yogurt. So something to consider. Any questions on that?
And I like using plain yogurt and substitute a mayo for like ranch dressing and stuff like that.
Perfect. Yeah. Plain Greek yogurt, especially, but even plain yogurt is a great substitute for things like sour cream or like a cream and like a dressing. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Anything else? All
and
right.
I have to share this. It's kind of funny. My dad don't like yogurt at all, and I substitute the mayo with yogurt to make ranch dressing, and he loved it. He didn't complain about it.
Yeah, I find if you don't tell people, they don't always know, right? Yeah, that's good. That's good. It's good to experiment. Yeah, so if you can also use yogurt in baking too as a substitute for some higher fat stuff when you're baking. So it brings a lot of moisture to baking. So yeah, think about all the uses for yogurt. And if you've never made yogurt, something fun to try. Maybe over the summer, if you have kids around, it's a good way to teach them about healthy, good bacteria. And it's super easy, and you get yogurt cheaper than if you bought it. So, and all you need to start is some plain yogurt and milk. So that's pretty cool. All right, this is my, for those of you who have been to my classes before, I get on a soapbox about half and half and fat-free half and half. So this is like a food marketing thing that I just do not like at all. So does anyone know what half and half is?
It's half milk, half cream.
Perfect, yeah. So we know that milk is milk, right? And you can have all these different types of milk with fat content, but we know that cream, by definition, right, is the fat, the milk fat, right? It's the fat of the milk product. So what would fat-free half and half be?
By logic, wouldn't it just be milk?
Yeah, right. It's like, how do you have fat-free half and half? Because by definition, it's like saying I have fat-free cream. Like, how is that possible? You know, so this is a really good time to read the labels, right? And I just use this as a really good example of reading labels because, you know, we talk a lot about buying low-fat, fat-free stuff. So it's really easy to look at the front of this and say, well, I could buy half and half, or I could buy fat-free half and half. But for some products, that just doesn't make any sense. So if we were to turn this over, we can see that the half and half is on the left, the fat-free is on the right. And if you look at ingredients, it's exactly what Camellia said. It is fat-free milk and then sugar, because what do food manufacturers often do when they take out fat to make things taste good? They add sugar. So my encouragement to you is just be a critical thinker. Don't let these food marketers win and take a look at what you're buying, because maybe you could just buy skim milk and use that instead if you don't want the fat in the half and half or the calories in the half and half. So just something to consider. This is just always, it's something that I think really spoke to me because I was just never really thought about it, right? I was just like, yeah, fat-free half and half, that's a thing. But then when I really started to think about it, I was like, what could that actually be? And so it just took me by surprise. Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay, I don't hear anyone as quite as angry as I am, but maybe you'll get there. I hope not. Okay, any questions about dairy that we didn't cover? This is the end of our dairy section. I know there might have been some other questions before we move on to cereal. All right. So cereal is another aisle that can be really confusing to pick something that we believe is healthy and good and budget friendly. So this might be sort of what an aisle looks like when we walk in, right? I didn't get everything, but I tried to make it a little bit representative. So you walk in, imagine yourself in that cereal aisle, and you go in. What do you do? How do you sort through it all? Anyone have any suggestions on where to start?
I would say, Alyssa, that I find the labels quite surprising. I mean, the nutrition part of it, because especially once you start looking, you see what a broad range of fats and sugars there are in different cereals, even ones that, like the Simply Granola there, is probably pretty high calorie.
Yes, I know. I snuck that one in there hoping to trick people, but you got it. Yeah. So there's a lot of like confusing marketing and labeling on the front package. So yeah, I love that idea, like flipping it over and deciding based on the nutrition label, because that's always going to give you the clearest information. So I'm just scrolling up the chats too. Nicole, yeah, eliminate obvious sugar-coated cereal. So I think she might be looking at the Lucky Charms and being like, I don't even have to turn that one over, right? We kind of know. And one thing I'd like to point out with that is that oftentimes those cereals are at the eye, more of the eye level of kiddos. So they know what they're doing, right? They know who's going to pick that one off the shelf. Emma says it depends if you're feeling healthy or not. That's totally fine. I mean, I don't think you should, you know, eat oatmeal every single day of your life, but at least know what you're buying, right? Granola, but look for lower sugar. Yep. And we'll talk a little bit. I have a nutrition label for granola coming up, so we'll talk about what to look for with granola. But granola is one of those tricky ones too, where it's been labeled as natural and healthy, and I think there's just this instinct that that's what we go for. But when we flip it over, it's often problematic. Jeremy said Cheerios, good for cholesterol. And yeah, we'll talk about what in Cheerios might be doing that. It does say that on the front. Does it really? And is it different than others? And Jared says Quaker Oats, oatmeal, yay. I'm glad someone brought that up. That's one of our healthiest options. And diet cereal, which I guess is probably ones with, I'm not quite sure what that means, Jared, but I would guess it means something like sugar substitutes or low sugar or something like that. Yeah, so those are all really, really good things to look for. And so my general way of looking at cereal, if we want to choose something healthy, and I know Emma said we don't always want to do that, and that's fine, but if we really do want to choose something healthy for us, we want to look for something that's high in fiber, low in sugar, and if it has protein, that's a really good plus. So we're gonna look at what that looks like. And I want to really, really stress what Linda said, which is with cereal, it is so important until you get used to what you want to buy to turn that package over and look at the food label. So that's what we're going to do next. And I'll just say, okay, Jared said shredded wheat. Yes, that you're going to see that on my list of some of the healthiest options. And overnight oats, yes, that's a wonderful idea. So for those who don't know, overnight oats is when you take oatmeal and you leave it in the fridge overnight with the milk and or milk substitute and toppings, and it kind of cooks itself, so to speak, without having to cook. So it's super convenient and really a great solution.
On the fiber, like what's the difference between like the dietary fiber, soluble and insoluble?
It's like you read my notes. We're gonna get there. Just give me 1 second, but that's a great question. So let's go through first how we even read these nutrition labels. So the first thing you always want to look for is serving size, right? So when we look at the oatmeal versus the Special K versus the Quaker granola, we can see that oatmeal is half a cup. That's a half a cup dry. So right, that's going to expand as we cook it. So that's one thing. The Special K is 1 1/4 cup. The granola is a half a cup as is, right? You're not going to cook it anymore. So it's going to be a smaller amount overall. So that's the first thing to note. You want to make sure when you're comparing nutrition, you're comparing apples to apples, and none of these are exactly equivalent. So you got to keep that in mind. The next thing we want to look at is calories. Calories are important, especially when we're concerned about our weight, because weight loss is kind of based on calorie balance. Expending more energy by exercising and taking less in. So if we're interested in maintaining our weight or reducing our weight, oftentimes we want to control calories. So you'll see that the oatmeal has 150, the cereal, and you want to look at that without the milk, because that, if you want to compare apples to apples here, that's a little closer. That's 150, and as Linda predicted, 200 calories in a half a cup of the granola. So that's definitely higher for less amount. If you were going to increase that to the amount of the Special K, you're thinking more like over 400. So just something to keep in mind. For those who came last time, we talked a lot about fat. I'm not going to go into super detail, but we probably want to reduce our unhealthy fats, like our saturated fats. Not a lot in any of these, you can see, and that's really common. But there is more fat overall in that granola. And that's really common with granola because they cook it with a lot of oils and stuff, more so than other cereals. Cholesterol is something to be concerned of, but I would still focus on the saturated fat because that turns into our high cholesterol in our body more often. Sodium, we want to look at reducing sodium content. So you can see that the Special K has quite a bit of it, kind of surprisingly. and then your carbs. And your carbs are going to be broken down, especially in these new labels. And it's really nice because they separate out the fibers, the total sugars, and the added sugars. So we want lots of fiber. So high amounts of fiber, low amounts of added sugar. So when we look at these, we see that the Quaker granola is an older label, how they used to have the sugars. So you can see it's 10 grams. We don't know how much is added. So we need to look at the ingredient list to know if that's added or natural sugars. And then with our other ones, we can really see it broken down. So oatmeal has, in this case, has 0 grams. Now, if you got the flavored oatmeal, you're going to see some added sugars. So be aware of that. And then you're going to look at if you have diabetes or carb counting, you're going to look at your total carbs minus your fiber. And you want a lot of fiber, as much fiber as you can get. Fiber is great for us. And we're going to talk about the different types here in just 1 second. And then, like I said, looking at protein, and these are all about the same. So the only thing missing from these pictures, because I couldn't get them on one screen, would be the ingredient list. And that's going to, again, give you insight into kind of the quality of the food, what's in it, stuff like that. Does anyone have any questions about any of this? Besides fiber, because we're going to get there.
Alyssa, I tend to not really look very much at sodium because I don't have high blood pressure. But boy, there really is such a difference in the amounts of sodium, especially in the special K.
Yeah.
So is it important to look at that for more than just people who have heart problems or high blood pressure?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all want to kind of keep our sodiums within a good limit. And if we don't have high blood pressure, we can probably be a little more liberal. But yeah, I was also surprised when I looked at that. And it's just a good reminder that anytime we get processed foods, we want to look at that, because it's possible that they've added a lot more sodium than we're actually tasting in it.
And do you think that extra sodium is just for the taste for people, or is there some other reason it becomes high sodium?
That's a good question. I mean, I know salt is used as a preservative, but I'm not sure if that's the purpose here. Honestly, that's a good question. I'd have to research it. I don't have an answer.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So before we get to fiber, I just want to, we had a question earlier about, lactose and that being a type of sugar. So when you are looking at your ingredient label, and again, with these new nutrition labels, pulling out added sugar, it's really nice. You don't have to be quite as focused on the ingredient list, but remember that the ingredient list is going to go from the most to the least in terms of how much is in each product. So you really want these added sugars, if they're in that list, to be lower back. But sugar isn't just sugar, right? So you have to be really savvy again and kind of know all the different names for sugars. So these are some examples of different names for sugars. So sometimes it's a syrup, sometimes it's an actual sugar, and sometimes it's anything that ends in ose. So something to just be aware of. Yeah. Jamie said she tries to stay out of the cereal aisle, and I don't blame you. And we can talk in a second about some other breakfast options besides cereals. But cereals are super convenient and a really easy thing to pick up, and you can stay healthy. So I want to talk about fiber while we look. These are actually some of the healthier options that you can find. So if you are like, yeah, Alyssa, that sounds great, but I'm never turning a box of cereal over to look at the back, I would encourage you to just grab one of these maybe as an option, although for different people, different ones will be better choices. So dietary fiber is actually a part of any kind of plant-based food, and it's the part of the food that does not get digested. So there's 2 different types, and they're both really good for us. There's not like one that's better than the other. Soluble fiber, soluble just means dissolved, so it dissolves in water. And insoluble doesn't dissolve in water. So insoluble fiber actually attracts water into your stool, and that's what makes it easier for you to go. So when we talk about fiber helping you with your digestion and helping soften stools and all that, that's from the insoluble. Soluble fiber dissolves and becomes a gel. So if any of you have had Metamucil, you might have noticed that if you let it sit too long, it becomes a gel in the glass. So you want to drink it pretty quickly. And that can improve digestion, and it can also improve, and both of these can improve stuff like cholesterol levels and sugars, help with blood sugar control. High fiber helps with weight loss. It helps prevent cancer. It helps prevent hypertension. Lowers your risk of diabetes. It is like, fiber is just this beautiful, amazing thing. I know that's weird, but it's so good for you. So the more fiber, the better. It helps with all those different things. So both types. Does anyone have any questions about fiber?
So would you try to stay away from the stuff that has dietary fiber then?
So if I go back to, so no, I mean, dietary fiber you want more of. And so it'll break that down. Dietary fiber is everything, soluble and insoluble, and then it's going to break it down, right? And so then you see that like the old-fashioned oatmeal here on the screen has 2 grams of soluble, which means it probably has 2 grams of insoluble. You want both of those, so the more fiber, the better. And you're gonna primarily get fiber. Well, fiber obviously comes from plant-based products, so you're gonna get it from plants, but whole grains are a really good source, fruits and vegetables and those types of things. So you'll see here that a lot of these choices on the screen have a higher fiber content, some protein, a pretty low sugar content, and the calories absolutely vary. So grape nuts has calories similar to the granola, but it's also kind of got less of the fat and more of the fiber and the protein. So it's a toss-up, but avoiding added sugar is definitely something you want to do with these cereals. That's probably number 1. You'll notice that I didn't put like something like cream of wheat on here because that's a refined grain, so the level of fiber is not going to be as high. So that's why that's on there, but oatmeal is a whole grain. And Cheerios has whole grains, which is why it brings down your cholesterol, because it has fiber. So all this stuff with fiber will bring down your cholesterol, whether or not they're advertising it or not. Any questions about this?
Plus, I have a question. So I know we're looking at all brand name products here. Do you think store brands, is there some kind of regulation that brings them pretty close to the same nutritional value as the name brand? Any idea?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a regulation, but I think since they're trying to mimic the product, that they're going to be very close. So yeah, I buy generic oatmeal, generic shredded wheat. I think some of these don't have as many equivalents. Like I'm not sure that the Uncle Sam, there is an equivalent, but yeah, I think that generally. But obviously, if you're concerned, turn over that package and look, but I have not seen a big difference. That's a good question. One of the things I like to do too, muesli is sort of a healthier version of granola, generally speaking, and it's pretty easy to make your own. So that might be a consideration if you really like granola. And I can send out a recipe for that in the post-class email if you guys are interested. So that might be a really good option for that. So I want to finish cereal by talking about oatmeal, because there's usually a lot of questions about oatmeal. Is it good for me? What type should I buy? What's the difference? So I'm going to ask you, so you don't ask me, what's the difference between all these types of oatmeals? And what do you look for with oatmeal?
Well, one thing that I know between like the quick cooking and the instant oats are that they're cut finer so that they cook faster. But so I guess they would also maybe be more dense if you did a half a cup of quick cooking oats versus old fashioned oats. You'd have more substance in the quick cooking, but then that also means more calories and so forth. So
yeah, and that's the main difference, Linda. Thank you. And then Irene says she hears still cut is better, less processed the better, says Jared. Yeah. So basically, Linda pointed out the big difference. So oats start as what we call groats, which are the full thing. Then they take out I think the hull is stripped off, and we're left with that whole grain, which is these 3 parts of the grain, and that's the oatmeal. And then they're all just processed a little bit differently. Old-fashioned rolled oats. So old-fashioned oats, quick cooking oats, and instant oats are all called rolled oats. Steel cut oats are different. So the rolled oats, the oats are steamed and then they're pressed flat. And then this rolling process shortens the cooking time. That's why all the rolled oats, whether old-fashioned or instant, actually cook quicker than steel cut. So with our old-fashioned oats, they're steamed, flattened, and flaked, and then that's kind of where they're left. With the quick cooking oats, they're actually cooked and dried ahead of time. That's why they cook. So because they're partially cooked ahead of time. And instant oats, they're even thinner and they cook even quicker. So it's about how they're processed, but nutritionally speaking, if you're just looking at the oats, I like what Rebecca pointed out, that there's some stuff added, so we want to be really careful, but just the oats themselves are pretty equivalent, because some are just pre-cooked and cut a little finer, and some are just are not. So if your barrier to eating oatmeal is how long they take to cook, I would encourage the quick cooking oats or instant oats, with the keeping in mind, as Rebecca points out, that they might have added sodium, they might have added sugar, the flavored ones are going to have all that added stuff. So you want to be careful with that. Steel cut oats are, for those who've seen them, they look really different than our rolled oats because they're not rolled. They're just kind of cut into nubs, and that's why they take longer to cook. And they're slightly more nutritious, but really, really minimally. So I'd say go for what you like. Try again, just like the yogurt, to choose those plain versions. So you add your own stuff afterwards, right? Ooh, steel cut oats in the slow cooker. I like that idea. I have not tried them, Linda. I don't think they would work just off the top of my head, but if someone else knows better, using steel cut oats for overnight oats, I think would probably not cook them enough as they need to be, but I don't have actual experience, so that's a good question.
They do not work.
Okay.
I tried that first because I was always told, oh, you have to have steel cut oats. Yeah, they don't work.
Okay.
So
Yeah, we make steel cut oats in the slow cooker overnight all the time, and just add well, you have to grease the sides real good, but like coconut oil or something. But we add chopped apples and cinnamon, but no sugar, and it comes out really, really good.
That's awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That sounds like a delicious recipe, especially in the wintertime. Waking up to that would be wonderful. Yeah, so those are all great. What I'll encourage you to try too, a little challenge for those who are adventurous, is eating a oatmeal for breakfast that is savory rather than sweet. So topping it with a little bit of spinach, or maybe an egg, or some nuts, to make it a little, to get those vegetables in and some protein with your oatmeal. Because remember, oats are just a grain. So if you can put it on rice, you can probably put it on oatmeal. We just have a way of thinking about oatmeal. So something to try there too, that's a little different. And remember your other breakfast options, right? Cereal's only one of them. Anyone want to quickly throw out some other breakfast ideas that they enjoy that are healthy? Sorry, did someone say something? No? Hard-boiled eggs, yes, those are good. They're convenient. And did you know that hard-boiled eggs do not need to be refrigerated? So that's awesome. And they're food safe out at room temperature, so you can take them with you. Eggs with spinach and tomatoes in muffin pans. Oh yes, like our little egg frittatas. Those are awesome. Camelia, I'm not sure what you're saying really too, but if it's the hard-boiled eggs, yes, I learned that from another public health service officer. So yeah, because eggs are kind of sterile inside, and then you're cooking them, they can stay there good for a long time. I forget, I don't want to misguide anyone and get them sick, but for a pretty long time. White cake made with only eggs, no oil, with a lot of fruit and yogurt on top. Okay, that's a good one. So lots of breakfast options. I like little wraps. I like to take whole grain wraps and put some egg and some salsa in it. I like to do, eggs and toast sometimes with whole grain bread. And we're going to talk about bread next, how to choose that good bread to have with breakfast maybe. Yeah, they don't have to be kept in the fridge. So yeah, get creative with your breakfast. Make stuff ahead of time, freeze it, grab it, go. You don't have to rely on cereal, but now you kind of know. Yes, Linda, I love that too. That's good. Now you kind of know some options. So there you go. Anything? Ooh, sourdough bread with eggs. It doesn't make me hungry. I haven't had lunch yet. All right, any other comments about cereal before we move along? That sounds good too, Rebecca. All right, bread. So I'm going to start with a question for you all again. This is a true false, so you've got a 50% chance of getting it right. Bread labeled as multigrain is a healthy choice, true or false? False, 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 false. Yes, you guys got it. You don't need me. We're gonna finish. No. Good job. Why is that false?
Is it because they may not be whole grains? Because I always been taught to look for whole grains, like
Right.
100%
multi-
whole grains,
yeah.
just whole wheat.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just 100% whole wheat instead of it saying whole wheat.
Yeah,
Like,
so multi-grain, all that means is that multiple types of grains were used, right? And I like the answer, like it depends, right? Yeah, it's not every multi-grain bread is bad for us. It really depends, but multi-grain in and of itself does not indicate a healthy choice necessarily. It just means that multiple grains were used in it. Same with saying wheat bread. Same with looking at just the color of the bread. If it's brown, it's good for us. That's not necessarily true either. And same with this like 9 grain that's shown on there, which is similar to the multi-grain. So this is another area where food marketers have become really good at kind of fooling us. So what you want to look for is the first ingredient on that ingredient list. And you want to look and make sure that it says whole grain, as Linda was saying. Unbleached enriched flour is what you're going to find on other options. And if that's the first choice, you know that you're not getting whole grain. And remember that whole grain typically means higher fiber, filling us up more, giving us more of the good stuff that we need to keep our cholesterol down and our blood sugars down. So we typically want to go for as much whole grain as we can. If not 100%, something close. Rye bread doesn't necessarily mean whole grain either. Stone ground doesn't mean it. And obviously 100% natural doesn't mean anything at all, whether it's on bread or anything. Natural is not a word that's really strongly, what's the word, defined in the food industry. So you can put it on a lot of things and it doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot. Also multi-seed, yeah, doesn't really mean anything. You have to think like someone who's trying to trick you. So if you think about it, multi-seed, okay, so it has some different types of seed, right? That does not mean whole grain either. Now, again, these words don't necessarily mean that they're not. It just means that you need to be a smart shopper and flip over this label. So you want to look for 100% whole grain, or look for whole grain as that first thing on the ingredients list. If it's not, it may be as little as 1%. Remember, if it's not that first ingredient, it may be a very small amount. So even though there is whole, if it says with whole grain, that's not enough either, because it might be just a little bit of whole grain and mostly processed flour. A little trick you could use is that whole grain stamp you see on the side here. So you could look for that on the front of the label. So that's a pretty good indicator, especially if it's 100%. 50% is also pretty good. So you can look for that. And some tricks for what to look for on the ingredient label. You want it to say whole grain of some sort. It might not be whole grain. It might say whole something else, any type of flour, whole grain, whole wheat. You just want that whole word to be there. You could say oats or oatmeal, because as we just learned, oats and oatmeal are whole grains. Buckwheat and millet are also whole grains. So those could be the first ingredients as well. So not much to say with bread, but sprouted, that's a good question. If sprouted means anything, I'd have to look that up. Does anyone know if sprouted is a meaningful indicator of whole grain? Okay,
Hmm.
well, if someone looks that up and knows, let me know, or I can look it up after class. So that's a good question, Irene. Generally speaking, you're going to see them advertising like 100% whole grain or something too, even if it's sprouted. So you might just want to look for that, but it's a good question. Bread also might have added sugar and things like that. So that's another thing to look for. But main thing is just looking for that 100% whole grain. Any questions about bread else besides those? Okay, we're gonna move on to snack food real quick. Why can snack food choices be problematic? We're not gonna spend super long on this. I think most of you know it, but I just want to touch on it. So what are we concerned about with snack food?
They're so delicious, you can't stop eating them.
Right, we might eat too much. That's true. And what's wrong with eating too much? It's what people are putting in the chat. Too much sugar, too much salt, too much fat, right?
Right.
We're eating too much, and it's not our like berries, right? It's something that maybe is not gonna make us feel great after. Yeah, so those are all really good answers. So chips, crackers, and cookies tend to be high in added sugar, high in sodium, high in fat, low in nutrients, and they're often not very filling. So like Linda was saying, you might eat so much that, and you might not even feel full, and then you go eat dinner afterwards. So these are nice to enjoy, but they're nice to enjoy in smaller portions and you know, very mindfully, right? We don't want to go crazy. But that doesn't mean there aren't some better options. So I wanted to go over some snack options that might be your go-to choice when you don't want those extra, you know, calories or fat or sugar grams in your diet. So some salty alternatives, you know, I like peanut butter with my, insert anything here. Yes, popcorn, definitely on there, Camellia. Just make sure with popcorn that you're trying to get stuff that's low fat, low salt, which can be really hard unless you make it yourself. But making popcorn yourself is like super easy. Tofu, yeah, there's some great ways to make tofu that are good, and those are full of proteins and other good things for you. Peanut butter with almost anything is amazing for me. Celery, apples, as you see pictured here. Two main types of cracker brands, and I think their generic alternatives would also suit this, that are whole grain, as you can see, are Triscuits and Wheat Thins. So those are good ones. If you do want crackers, those are good ones to look for because there are whole grains. Yeah, stir fry is good too. Tofu's good. Those might be more like meals for some people, but if you can whip that up for a snack, awesome. You might want to make some little veggie kebabs like you see here, or cut up some vegetables and eat it with some hummus or something like that. Some low-fat string cheese, some unsalted mixed nuts are good options. Anyone else have any other they want to share that they like to salty, healthy snacks? And by salty, I guess I mean savory. We don't want a lot of salt. Okay, some of the protein bars, be careful with protein bars, but if you know what you're getting, you can get some good ones, but they often have a lot of added fat and sugar, so just be careful. If you're not familiar with what's in the ingredients, flip it over. Dean, following up, sprouted bread is made from whole grains, so it sounds like it's better than ungerminated. That's kind of interesting, so that might be something to try. So that's what they mean when they say sprouted. Thanks for sharing that, Dean. Any other salty snacks, savory snacks? All right, so if we go to kind of more sweeter ones, fruit's a great option here. You could even maybe add some dark chocolate like it shows on the banana. That's a good kind of sweet snack to have. Freeze-dried or dried fruit is good, but be aware that dried fruit can have added sugar, so try to avoid the ones with added sugar. And you can also eat a lot more dried fruit than you can fresh, which leads to more calories. Yep, definitely, Camellia. Got to be careful with it. I like the freeze dried because it tends to be a little, you tend to be able to have more of it without as much even natural sugar condensed into it, but you got to be careful with it. It's true. So it's a better option than a lot of our, cookies sometimes, but it can be bad in large amounts. And it can, just imagine how many raisins you can eat in one sitting versus how many grapes, for example. And then things like graham crackers are actually whole grains. So again, you don't want to eat tons of it, but you do, that could be a better option than some of the other cookies and biscuits that aren't whole grain. Ooh, frozen grapes, Camellia says. Yep, those are good. Frozen bananas with that chocolate is good. Yep, those are all good options. I like frozen pineapple too.
Huh. Interesting.
Frozen cantaloupe bites, yep. Just freeze all your fruit. You guys got it. All right, those are all good things. Thanks for sharing. So we don't have tons of time left. I want to get to drinks before we finish, and I think we'll have time for this today. So beverages, and I think a lot of this is stuff you already know. So I want to spend most of my time talking about juice. So I just want you guys to be very savvy juice buyers, because this is another area where it's so easy, and I've done this before, where I'm looking for some 100% juice, and I grab something because I see 100% and it's not juice. It's 100% vitamin C, like you see here, or 100% profit. So they love to add 100% to the front, but then if you look carefully, that top box says juice cocktail. And anytime you see cocktail on a juice, it means that they've added stuff to it. It's not 100% juice. So juice flavored beverages, juice cocktails, or juice drinks are indicators that you're not getting 100% juice. And they often have a really small amount of real juice. You're drinking something more like Kool-Aid than you are real juice. So just be aware of that. They're similar to most soft drinks, right? So I don't want you guys going in with the best intentions to the grocery store and getting something that's where you're thinking you're making a better choice than a soda, and what you're getting is pretty much a soda. So be careful when you buy juice, but I will say this, even if you buy 100% juice, what might be problematic about that?
You're not really getting the fiber.
Right, yeah, so you've lost a lot of the good stuff. You have a lot of sugar. You might have, it's sort of empty calories, not totally empty. You are getting some of the nutrients like vitamin C, magnesium, and potassium, but you're losing the fiber, some of the phytonutrients, and you're getting a lot of natural, but a lot of really quick absorbing sugar and calories. So if you do choose 100% juice, choose small amounts of it. I think the recommendation currently is just like a very small glass, one very small glass per day for adults. It's not something that I generally recommend, especially if you have diabetes and you're working on controlling your blood sugars. It can really spike blood sugars really quick. Because just because it's a natural sugar doesn't mean that's the way we want to consume it. Eating whole fruit is a much better choice. And then there's all these other, all these other choices at the store, right? And that's how much sugar is in a lot of those. So, you know, Gatorade, unless it's diet, has a lot of sugar. Our energy drinks not only have a lot of sugar, but a dangerous amount of other things, including caffeine. So really strongly encourage you to try to eliminate sugar sweetened beverages from your diet. Any questions about anything here? Trying to close up in time. So some healthy alternatives: regular water, sparkling waters, infused waters, diluting 100% juice if you are going to drink it. Oftentimes we can dilute it and still enjoy it. And if you're comfortable with sugar substitutes, that might be another option. Yeah, sugar-free energy drinks still have some of the caffeine and stuff. Energy drinks are, seeing some of the studies that they've done, they're not good for our like cardiac health and stuff. So we still probably want to stay away from those, but sugar-free is probably a better option. Gatorade Zero will have the sugar substitutes. So if you're comfortable with that, and my readings have shown that there's no real evidence that sugar substitutes are necessarily bad for us, but a lot of people like to avoid them. So Gatorade Zero might be a good option if you're comfortable with it. Yep. So I want to give everyone a chance who has come to be able to you know, fill out the survey and get their gift card. So really, if you don't mind, if you could post that gift card link in there. I want to just talk about this real quick. So We do want everyone to fill out that survey link that's coming. And actually, I might be able to do it real quick. Okay, here it is. Sorry, Aurelia, I didn't mean to do that. So here's the link. Oops, that's not it. Here's the link. So even if you do not want a gift card, please fill this out so we can keep track of who came today. But if you do, you definitely have to fill it out. So go ahead and do that. These are some things coming up. We have a Vancouver Garden Work Party on Saturday, if you can come. Volunteer at the garden in Toledo all summer. Every second Tuesday of the month, we have a virtual diabetes support group, and we are soon going to be sending out a food sovereignty assessment. So keep your eyes open for that. Sorry to wrap it up so quickly, but we are just before 1. I will hang out for as long as people want to talk or ask questions. But if you have to go, feel free to go. Just make sure you grab that link. And if you miss it for some reason, just email me and I will send it out to you. But thank you everyone for coming. I think we covered a lot, and I appreciate everyone's being engaged and involved and sharing their ideas and thoughts. And I will send out an email follow-up as well with some information and recipes. And someone asked for part 1. I can also send out the link for that. We will post that. So if you missed part 1, you can take a look. All right. Thank you everyone for coming. Have a great rest of your week.
Alyssa, I have one comment that might be helpful for other people. As a senior citizen, I have to watch my food intake or I'll gain a lot of weight. But I think really the tool that I use the most in my kitchen when I'm feeding myself is using a diet scale that weighs in both ounces and grams. Because if you put your bowl on that and then put your cereal in it, you'll be surprised. When you eyeball your servings, you can be way off. So my little kitchen scale is my best friend.
Yes, good point. Thanks for sharing that, Linda. And along with your scale, measuring cups and teaspoons can be really helpful as well. But yes, if you want to get a really good sense of what you're intaking, that's the best way to do it. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have anything? Any thoughts, comments, questions? All right, well, I'm going to paste the survey one more time for everyone so you all have it. I'm going to put it up on here. So thank you everyone for attending. I'm not going to close the meeting yet, just because I want everyone to have a chance to get that link. But if you need to sign off, go ahead and we'll see you the next round. Thanks, Linda. And yeah, thanks everyone. All right, people are signing off, so let me know if you don't get the link, and otherwise I'm going to end the meeting. Thanks everyone for coming.